The only remnants of Islamic Al-Andalus in this procession are these giant puppets of Granada's last Muslim rulers, Boabdil and his queen. But of the Jews, nothing remains. And those who converted even lost their identities. They were given Christian names. But to the church, they would always be infidels at heart.
Did you like the betrayal of Abu Abdallah and his mother? Are you feeling that? And notice it wasn't me that did that. I ain't got nothing. They didn't ask me, trust me. That's how the Spanish are remembering that. All right, a European scholar's assessment. Professor Lane Poole says, in 1492, the last bulwark of the Moors gave way before the Crusader Ferdinand and Isabella, and with Granada fell all Spain's greatness. For a brief while indeed, the reflection of the Moorish splendor cast a borrowed light upon the history of the land, which it had warmed with its sunny radiance. The great epoch of Isabella, Charles V, Philip II, Columbus, Cortez, and Pizarro shed a last halo about the dying moments of a mighty state. Then followed the abomination of desolation, the rule of the Inquisition, and the blackness of darkness in which Spain has been plunged ever since. In the land where science was once supreme, the Spanish doctors became noted for nothing but their ignorance and incapacity, and the discovery of Newton and Harvey were condemned as pernicious to the faith. Where once 70 public libraries had fed the minds of scholars and 500,000 books had been gathered together at Cordova for the benefit of the world, such indifference to learning afterwards prevailed that the new capital, Madrid, possessed no public library in the 18th century. And even the manuscripts of the Escurial were denied in our own days to the first scholarly historian of the Moors, though himself a Spaniard. The 16,000 looms of Seville soon dwindled to a fifth of their ancient number. The arts and industries of Toledo and Almeria faded into insignificance. The very baths, public buildings of equal ornament and use, were destroyed because cleanliness savored too strongly of rank infidelity. In other words, if you washed yourself too much, that proves that you're not a real Christian. Get it? That's what that means, right? The land, deprived of the skillful irrigation of the Moors, grew impoverished and neglected. The richest and most fertile valleys languished and were deserted. Most of the populous cities which filled every district of Andalusia fell into ruinous decay, and beggars, friars, and bandits took the place of scholars, merchants, and knights. So low fell Spain after she had driven away the Moors. Such is the melancholy contrast offered by her history. Now let me just say one thing about this. In the 19th century, that's the period where scholars were developing theories of white racial superiority. Does that make sense? And there was something that was around called the Negro question. And the great philosopher, John Stuart Mill, addressed the Negro question by saying two things. What about ancient Egypt? And the next one was, what do you think he said next? What about Spain? And at the time, no one could answer. Because, you know, this book had come out. What were people going to say now? What about Spain?
All right, buckle up for a historical revelation. Ever heard whispers of a dark age in Europe? Prepare to have your understanding flipped on its head as we journey to a land ablaze with innovation and brilliance while the rest of the continent slumbered. This isn't just another dusty history lesson. It's a vibrant exploration into the forgotten empire that illuminated Europe and left an indelible mark on the world we know today. Forget the tales you think you know about medieval Spain. What if I told you that for centuries it was a beacon of progress, a melting pot of cultures where groundbreaking science, breathtaking art, and revolutionary ideas flourished? We're talking about the Moors, a people whose story has been too often relegated to the footnotes of history. Prepare to witness the splendor of lost palaces, the ingenuity behind agricultural marvels, and the intellectual power that sparked Europe's own awakening. Did you know that the very foundations of some of our most cherished knowledge can be traced back to this extraordinary civilization? From the intricacies of mathematics to the wonders of astronomy and the early stirrings of what we now call chemistry, the Moors were pioneers whose contributions echo through the ages. This isn't just about looking back. It's about uncovering the hidden roots of our modern world and challenging the narratives we've long accepted. But who were these enigmatic Moors? Were they simply conquerors, or were they architects of a golden age? Prepare to delve into the fascinating tapestry of their origins, tracing their roots through the diverse landscapes of North Africa and beyond. Uncover the intricate blend of cultures that forged their unique identity and fueled their remarkable achievements. This is a story of people, of innovation, and of a legacy that continues to shape us. And what happened to this dazzling civilization? Why does its story often remain untold? Prepare for a journey through the dramatic shifts of history, exploring the forces that led to the rise and eventual decline of Moorish power in Spain. Uncover the lasting impact of this transformative era and the echoes that still resonate in the Iberian Peninsula and across Europe. This is a tale of power, resilience, and the enduring strength of cultural legacy. So, are you ready to unlock a pivotal chapter in history? A story brimming with brilliance, innovation, and a profound impact that continues to shape our world. Join us as we delve into the captivating civilization of the Moors, a journey that promises to challenge your perceptions and ignite a newfound appreciation for a truly extraordinary era.
Okay, greetings. The presentation is called The Civilization of the Moors, and I represent a company called the Black Secret Education Project. We are quietly empowering the people. Check us out. Our website is theblacksecret.co.uk, and you do have access to a free book that we are giving away, but you have to give us your email, 100 Black History Facts. All right, now, where do people like to begin African history? Is that not where everyone likes to start? Everyone's comfortable starting right here.
You mean white people?
Not just European people. So many people like to deal with this. Does anyone know what this is? It is Elephant and Castle. But what is the crest actually depicting?
I think it's the East Indian. Is it the East Indian Company?
This is actually the Royal African Company. Some people call it the Guinea Company. And this is what there's a book on heraldry, and they have a section called Royal African Company. And can you see it says, supporters, 2 African blacks. Can we see that? And then underneath, we've got a certain motto in Latin. Anyone here speak Latin? Anybody? Regio, floret. I have no idea what any of that stuff says. All right, but this is important. We're going to come back to this, right? All right, so where did the action take place? Here we have a map of Africa, a map of southern Europe. You've got the Mediterranean. You need to know where Egypt is. You need to know where Libya is. You need to know where Carthage is, where Numidia is, where Ceuta is, where Spain is, because all of these places are important in the story. Right, so you've all located those places? Okay, good. Now, the world in the year 500 AD to 1100 AD was quite an interesting place. The western part of the Roman Empire was in decline, and because the Roman Empire was the civilizing force in Western Europe entered the Dark Age. Things were going very badly indeed. And no doubt you've been taught about the Dark Ages. But let's be clear, the Dark Ages is one place in the world. Anyone know where? Europe. It doesn't mean the rest of the world was in a Dark Age. Does that make sense? And consequently, the appropriateness of the term needs to be discussed. Now, what exactly was going on? According to a European professor, his name is Robert Briffaut, we read, from the 5th to the 10th century, Europe lay sunk in a night of barbarism, more awful and horrible than that of the primitive savage, for it was the decomposing body of what had been a great civilization. Cities had practically disappeared. They were pulled down and used as quarries to build towers in which a bishop or a baron established himself, who could afford some protection. In Nîmes, for example, the remains of the population dwelt in huts built among the ruins of the amphitheatre. Other towns were completely abandoned. Famines and plagues were chronic. There were 10 devastating famines and 13 plagues in the course of the 10th century alone. Cases of cannibalism were not uncommon. There were manhunts, not with a view to plunder, but for food. Are we understanding this? All right, now when I read that, the obvious question is, for real? So what do all the European scholars say? Joseph McCabe wrote a book called The New Science and the Story of Evolution, where he says, none of our modern sophistry redeems the squalor of Europe from the 5th to the 11th century. By the year 1000, Europe was reduced to a condition which, if we were not Europeans, we should frankly call barbarism. Yet at that time, the Arabs had a splendid civilization in Spain, Sicily, Egypt, and Persia, and linked it on to those of India and China. Now, you'll notice that Joseph McCabe has called what happened in Spain Arab. Interesting. In other words, couldn't bring himself to go as far as he needed to go, but it's cool. All right, what about the civilization of the Moors? There's a Muslim chronicler, and we read, Cordova is the bride of Andalusia. To her belong all the beauty and all the ornaments that delight the eye or dazzle the sight. Her long line of sultans form her crown of glory. Her necklace is strung from the pearls. Her poets have gathered from the ocean of language. Her dress is of the banners of learning, well knit together by her men of science, and the masters of every art and industry are the hem of her garments. You've never heard a city described like that. And you can read about this in the story of the Moors in Spain. Okay, now, what are the details? The Muslim city of Cordova in Spain was much like a modern city by at least the year 950 AD. It had raised streets drained by sewers. It had raised pavements, it had street lamps, and it had a population of 1 million people. There were at least 200,000 properties and 60,000 mansions and palaces for the elite. The grander homes were 2 stories. They had latrines, running water, and the fine gardens surrounded the large buildings. There were 900 public baths and many private baths, 800 public schools and many colleges. Education was offered to girls as well as boys. This is an Islamic situation. We're understanding this. The El Zahra Palace, almost a city by itself, had 15,000 doors of brass and iron. By the way, I did actually visit that site. It is off the charts. If you get the opportunity, visit Spain, check out the Medinet El Zahra Palace. There were 4,000 markets where you could buy Chinese tea, Indian spices, Russian furs, African ebony and ivory, and locally made goods. I know people are thinking, Robin, you're exaggerating. We ready for this? We feeling that? Do you think we should go inside? All right, the building is called the Great Mosque of Cordova. The Spanish today call it La Mezquita. And if you then look up at one part of the ceiling, that's what's there. Not exactly jungle savagery, is it? All right, now about the presentation. We're going to deal with a few themes. Who are the Moors and what terms were used to describe the Muslims in Spain? I'm going to briefly talk about the conquest of Granada. I'm going to talk about the Umayyad dynasty, the Almoravid dynasty, the Almohad dynasty, and the Kingdom of Granada. So these are the themes that I want to get with in today's session, time permitting. All right, let's go. The peopling of North Africa is a complicated story. And it's complicated because North Africa is made up of multiple populations. Now, the very first people there were Africans. And they were descended from the people who created the Saharan rock paintings. And their descendants in North Africa are still there. They're called the Haratin Berbers and the Chauchen Berbers. Then you had a second group of people joining the populations in North Africa, Europeans. There was a European invasion of Egypt, and this invasion was during the time of Ramses III, and these invaders were called the Sea Peoples, coming in from the sea. And they had a big impact, and their descendants are in North Africa today. Then there was the Roman occupation of North Africa in the 2nd century BC, and the Romans ruled North Africa right up until the Arab period. And there was also the Vandal invasion. The Vandals are Germanic speakers. Does that make sense? And that's a very, very important part of history. Scholars don't want to talk about it too much, but it's a very important part of history. Trust me on that one. If I've got some time, I might get into it a little bit later on in the presentation. Then, of course, there was the Arab conquest of North Africa. The reason why so many North Africans are called Arabs is because they're not indigenous to Africa. They come in from Arabia, they conquered their way. Does that make sense? And they conquered in the 7th century AD, and right now, 2022, they're still there, and they are the dominant population. Then you have Europeans, another group of Europeans entering North Africa as slaves. And these people entering North Africa as slaves came from the Slavic states. Slavic states, Eastern Europe. Does that make sense? One of the reasons why Eastern Europeans are to this very day called Slavs and one of the reasons why Western Europeans have beef with Eastern Europeans. And as you know, that's what Brexit was all about. Right? Someone must have mentioned the war. All right, and then you had another group of people joining the population in North Africa, Africans, who were captured as slaves and brought there after the 16th century. Does that make sense? Now, the point is, do not confuse group 1 with group 5. Are we understanding this? And scholars do that, and why they do that is so they can present all black North Africans as descended from slaves in the 16th century, and then present the Europeans that conquered during the Sea Peoples period as the original North Africans. Do you get it? This is why the details matter. Okay, now the original Moors, the oldest art in North Africa are the Saharan rock paintings. And the Saharan rock paintings, we feeling that image? And if you can Google them, you can see they're all Africans. And the descendants of that are the Haratin Berbers and the Chowchen Berbers. And that's what a typical Haratin looks like, all right? But we mentioned the Sea Peoples, the Vandals, the Romans, and their descendants, and intermarriage took place between them and the original Moors. Does that make sense? So you now have Moors that look like this. Are we understanding that? Now, this woman is a part of Moorish history too. Does that make sense? So what usually happens is black scholars say, well, the term Moor means black, so it's black history. No, she's in it as well. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. So what are the terms that appear in the literature? You've got the term Moor, which is the European term meaning dark or black. That's the term Europeans use to describe the black people in Spanish history. Then you've got the term Berber, and that's the term that Arab scholars use. It's a linguistic term, people speaking Berber. The origins of Berber, by the way, is in East Africa, in the Horn of Africa. You can link ancient Egyptian, you can link Berber, you can link Cushitic, which is Somali, you can link Hausa or Chadic. They all go back to one parent, which is in the Horn of Africa. That automatically tells you that the very first Berber speakers were sub-Saharan Africans. Then you've got the term Arab. Now, a lot of scholars are happier using that because it's better than saying African. Do you see why people are happier saying that? Now, in truth, the term Arab can, with justification, be used because the official language used during the Moorish period was indeed Arabic. All right? Then you've got the term Saracen. All right, you old heads here, who remembers the TV series Gladiators? Right? Did you notice that all the black gladiators had race-specific names? There was Shadow. Everyone's forgotten this, right? All right, for you young heads here, this is what Britain was like back in the day. So you got the gig, you became Shadow, you became Rhino, you became Nightshade. And of course, yeah, Google this. And of course you had Saracen. Now what the word Saracen means is desert dweller. It's coming from the word Sahara. The problem with the term desert dweller is it doesn't tell us, is this the African desert or the Arab desert? Which one? Does that make sense? All right, now the Arabian invasion of North Africa was of great consequence. The Arabs conquered their way across between 639 and 708 AD. Many Africans fled south from North Africa to lands south of the Sahara to avoid being enslaved. This is why in Africa today, non-blacks live north of the Sahara and blacks live south of the Sahara. Do we get this? And if you visit any one of the North African countries, the further south you go, the blacker everybody gets, right? Now, those that remained converted to Islam. The Arabs occupied Egypt in 639 AD. They occupied Tripoli, which is Libya, 643 AD, and southwest Morocco by 681 AD. I'm using terms like Morocco because you know where it is on a map. These countries didn't exist under those names at that time. In 698, they appointed Musa ibn Nuzair governor of North Africa. However, Musa wanted to take control of Spain, but feared that an invasion at this time would exhaust his armies. So he had to think of, what am I going to do next? Musa ibn Nuzair is a Yemeni, so he's from the Arabian Peninsula. But the Yemenis, Do any of them look like any of you? Yes. Yes. So that's another story. All right, so what was going on in Spain? Well, in Spain, the Visigoths, the Germans, had been in control for the previous 200 years. And they are the ancestors of modern Spanish identity. Does that make sense? So if you're Spanish, your ancestors are the Goths. Does that make sense? And it's during this same time period, these German speakers basically conquer the Roman Empire. They also conquer their way into Britain, and they become the English. Do you get that? So what does that mean? It means before 500 AD, no, 400 and something AD, there weren't any English people living in England. Do you know where they were living? Germany. Yeah? All right. Now, the Goths seized Spain from the rule of the ailing Roman Empire that was collapsing during this period. So what did Musa do next? He sent a reconnaissance mission of 500 African converts to Islam into Spain, led by an African called Tarif. Using 4 ships supplied by Musa, they landed in Spain and they plundered a port. And they gave the port a new name, Tarifa. What about that? Named after Tarif, right? And what happened is the Moors imposed a special tax at that port, and that's the origin of the word tariff. Right? Did we know this? Aren't you glad you're here? All right, so in 711, Musa sent a second and more formidable African army into Spain, led by Tariq ibn Ziyad. Tariq ibn Ziyad was an African, and he led an expeditionary force of 6,700 African soldiers, 300 Arab translators and propagandists, and they occupied a portion of Spain, and then they renamed that part that they occupied the Rock of Tariq, Jebel Tariq, Gibraltar. We understanding this? Yeah? So that too is named after an African. Yeah? Okay, now European writer from the time period, there's a European monk, and this is what he said happened. The reins of their horses were as fire, their faces black as pitch. Their eyes shone like burning candles. Their horses were swift as leopards, and the riders fiercer than a wolf in a sheepfold at night. The noble Goths were broken in an hour, quicker than tongue can tell. O luckless Spain. Now, can you see that there's a description of the Moors that you don't often see? Faces black as pitch. So that tells us that dark-skinned Moors were the majority, but the light-skinned ones were also there. Right? Okay, the early years. The early years of Islamic rule in Spain were unstable. There were 19 governors over Cordova between 716 and 747. When you have a large number of rulers in a short period of time, that's political instability. Right? Actually, I did not want to mention Kwesi, but yeah, there it is. All right, so what happened next? Well, the Muslims took control of land vacated by the Spaniards, who fled north. Arabs settled the most fertile part of the south and left Africans poorer land in central Spain and areas closer to the north. And this led to conflict between Musa, the Arab overlord, but let's be quite clear, Yemeni overlord, and Tariq, the African subordinate. An African and Arab conflict would escalate and even blowing up into civil war. So they had to find a ruler who could unite both. And this ruler was Abd al-Rahman I. He's said to have been part Arab, i.e. Yemeni, and part African. So he would have been fully black, in other words. Right? In May 756, he became the ruler of Islamic Spain and the first of the Umayyads. He divided the country into military districts and administered it on that basis, and he created a standing army of 40,000 men who were mostly Africans. In agriculture, he made developments that led to the growth of the farming industry. He introduced accurate land surveying, built granaries to combat food shortages, and established effective irrigation canals. From the Middle East, he imported cotton, fruits, rice, spices, sugarcane, and vegetables. And so the industries that developed from Abd al-Rahman's policies were sugarcane and cotton were planted near the Mediterranean coastal regions. Figs and olives were farmed in the south. Oranges and wine were cultivated in Granada and Malaga provinces. Oranges, rice, and palm trees sprouted in Valencia. A silk industry grew up in Murcia. Leatherworking and dyeing flourished in Cordova. Ordnance developed in Toledo, and ceramics industry prospered in Almeria. Now, this is what the Science Museum in Granada has to say. We've got here hydraulic technology. Great advances were made in hydraulic technology in El Andaluz, Andalusia, Spain. The traditions of classical engineering were combined with new ideas emanating from the Islamic world from two principal sources, Syria and North Africa. The Eastern writer, El-Yaziri, was a leading proponent of these ideas. So, new ideas, what dates, please? What dates? 12th and 13th centuries. Does that make sense? And when this happened, this was new. We getting this? And then they have an example of a water wheel, and then they have the animal-powered water lifting device. Can you see that? Yeah? Now, medieval Nubia had sakias. Can you see that that sakia is the same as that? Does that make sense? All they did was they changed the four-legged beastie in the picture. Yes? And then we read Ibn Hawqal writing in 951 AD. What date, please? 951 AD. The most prosperous part of the country, Nubia, is the territory of Alwa, which has a continuous chain of villages and a continuous strip of cultivated land, so that a traveller may in one day pass through many villages, one joining the next, supplied with waters drawn from the Nile by means of sakias. 951 AD's 10th century. So why did the Granada Museum say the 12th and 13th century stuff was new? Why did they say that? Well, let's look again. We read about the new stuff, and we read that it was an Eastern writer called El-Yazari. Do you see? So they wanted to credit him. Now, why did they want to credit him? One wonders why they'd want to credit him. All right, now keeping it moving. How do we know the culture was mostly African? Well, when you read the descriptions of the early sultans of Spain, some of them are described as blonde, white, copper-colored, brown, reddish, dark, frizzly-haired, woolly-haired, etc. Well, they don't sound like Africans, so what's going on? Answer, huge amounts of intermarriage. Yeah? But so how do we know the culture was African? Well, in 1992, the Journal of Human Biology carried an article called Importation Route of the Sickle Cell Trait into Portugal, Contribution of Molecular Epidemiology. Let's read it. To elucidate the origin and spread of the sickle cell trait into the Portuguese population, we examined 9 polymorphic DNA markers within the beta-globin gene cluster defining the haplotype. The population sample included 64 sickle cell gene-bearing individuals from defined Portuguese-speaking white, black, and Asian Indian populations. The nature and geographic distribution of the different beta-S haplotypes in Portugal suggests that the sickle cell trait has been imported twice. How many times, please? Twice. Okay, so we're interested in the first one, aren't we? Between the 8th and 13th centuries from the Mediterranean basin in association with the Benin haplotype, and after the 15th century from Black Africa over an Atlantic route, Senegal and Bantu haplotypes. Okay, 8th to 13th century, that's 700 AD to 1200 AD. Isn't that the period we're talking about? And what type of sickle cell is it, folks? The Benin haplotype. Did we know this? Did we know this? So therefore we can infer that the culture indeed was mostly African. Now what does the term Moor mean? It was a geographical term of Phoenician origin, and it originally meant Western. The Phoenicians applied the term to the people of Northwest Africa. Another theory claims that the word Moor is derived from a Kushite capital city called Meroe. Now the Greeks and Romans adopted the term Mori, but also described these same Northwest Africans as Nigri, black, and Adusti, scorched. The Latin word Morus became a synonym with another Latin word, Niger, which means black. In other European languages, the association of the term Moor with Negroes continued well into the Renaissance period, as you know, because Shakespeare did that, right? Now, example, did you know that there was a Catholic saint called Saint Benedict the Moor? And then we read on the Catholic website, Benedict the Moor was born a slave near Messina, Italy. We read on, read on, read on. Then at the very end it says, the surname, the Moor, is a misnomer. So why is it a misnomer? Originating from the Italian il Moro, meaning the black. Now, if il Moro in Italian means the black, what does el Moro in Spanish mean? In it, to use the technical. However, Spanish students of mine, I used to be a school teacher, they insisted that the term morena does not mean black, it means brown. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to investigate. Now, there are also Wikipedia pages that claim that the term Moor is not an ethnic term, it's a religious term meaning Muslim. Does that make sense? All right, let's test this hypothesis. Now, there are modern scholars that will concede that the term Moor does indeed mean black, but according to them, the word Moor means black in every single language except Spanish. Does that make sense? And in Spanish, it doesn't mean black. What does it mean? All right, so there's a passage in the Bible, Song of Songs, and some of you know this. I am black but comely, O you daughters of Jerusalem. Does that make sense? We got that? So what I did was I pulled up a Spanish Bible to find out how was that translated. And guess what word they use for black? Morena, which we've been led to believe means brown. All right, hold that thought. So you know what I did? There's something called, you know, you've got these various texts, they call it apologetics, where they're breaking down different words of the Bible. Now, can you see where it's got there? The girl's uncertainty, and then you've got third paragraph, RSV, very dark. Can you see that's the same word that was translated as morena? We read on, JB, AV, ASV, more correctly, black. All right, let's carry on. This particular form is used only 6 times in the Old Testament. In this context, the word is hyperbolic. Suntan makes one swarthy, but not black. Although the simile at Song, chapter 5, verse 11, indicates that the meaning of the word is shiny black. So what is therefore the correct translation of morena? Shiny black. Now, how black is that? All right, now do you remember this? And you're wondering, what's this got to do with anything, right? All right, now, what's really interesting about this is Samuel Pepys had something to say. Samuel Pepys, 23rd of May, 1663. This is his diaries. And so we parted. Only there was walking in the gallery some of the Barbary company. And there we saw a draft of the arms of the company which the king is of, and so is called the Royal Company, which is in a field argent, an elephant proper with a canton on which England and France is quartered, supported by 2 Moors. The crest and anchor winged, I think it is, and the motto too tedious. And can you see that's that same Latin thing that I couldn't read earlier? So can you see that at the time, people said these were Moors, and then later on, it was now pretended that it was 2 African blacks. Now, if you can confuse the two, it means that Moors can be confused for African blacks. And we have to thank Sir Samuel Pepys for dropping the science on us. Okay, what about the Arabs? Now, the Arabs in Spain were mostly Southern Arabs and Yemenites, and even today, many of these people are Negroid. And taken with the Africans, the Islamic culture of Spain was largely a Negro achievement. For this reason, the culture is known as the Moors in Spain, a reference to the black colour of the conquering group, whether from Africa, who were the majority, or whether they were Southern Arabs or Yemenis, who were the minority.
The Hidden Science Academy, as introduced by Robin Walker. serves as a crucial platform for disseminating educational resources and fostering a deeper understanding of often overlooked historical narratives through initiatives like the Black Secret Education Project. The Academy aims to empower individuals with accessible historical knowledge, setting the stage for a revaluation of conventional understandings of civilization and its development. The exploration of Moorish civilization, therefore, becomes a vital component of this broader educational endeavor, offering profound insights into a pivotal era in European history. The period known as the Dark Ages in Europe stands in stark contrast to the concurrent flourishing of civilizations in other parts of the world. While the Western Roman Empire crumbled, leaving behind a continent grappling with decline, chaos, and the abandonment of urban centers, regions such as North Africa continued on a trajectory of prosperity and development. This divergence in historical trajectories underscores the importance of examining global history with a broader lens, acknowledging the dynamism and innovation that thrived beyond the confines of a declining Europe. It was from this vibrant North African context that the Moors emerged, eventually exerting a significant and transformative influence on the Iberian Peninsula. Their arrival and subsequent centuries-long presence profoundly shaped Spanish culture and economy, leaving an indelible mark on the region's landscape and its people. The architectural splendor of structures like the El Zara Palace, boasting an astonishing 15,000 doors, serves as a testament to the advanced civilization and sophisticated culture that the Moors brought to Spain. The demographic history of North Africa itself is complex and multifaceted, contributing to the diverse heritage of the Moorish population that crossed the Strait of Gibraltar. The indigenous Berber communities, with their rich history and traditions, formed a significant component of this demographic tapestry. Furthermore, historical invasions and migrations across North Africa contributed to a heterogeneous population, challenging simplistic narratives of a singular origin. The Arab conquest of North Africa in the 7th century introduced another significant layer to this demographic complexity. Over time, non-indigenous populations came to prominence in the region, further diversifying the ancestral makeup of those who would later establish a powerful presence in Spain. Multiple waves of slavery and conquest across North Africa further contributed to this intricate web of ancestry, highlighting the need for a nuanced understanding of the historical context. Musa ibn Nusayr, the appointed governor of North Africa, played a pivotal role in shaping the Muslim presence in Spain. Recognizing the strategic importance and potential wealth of the Iberian Peninsula, Musa harbored a desire to initiate its conquest. However, he also prudently considered the limitations of his army and the logistical challenges of such an ambitious undertaking. Prior to the arrival of the Moors, the Visigoths, ancestors of modern-day Spaniards, had held control over Spain for a period of 2 centuries. Their rule preceded the Muslim incursions, establishing a pre-existing political and social structure that the Moors would subsequently interact with and, in many ways, transform. This historical context is crucial for understanding the dynamics of the Moorish conquest and its long-term impact. Ultimately, Musa's forces spearheaded the Moorish conquest of Spain, ushering in an era of impactful governance and significant cultural exchange. The initial expedition led by the Moors resulted in the renaming of a key port to Tarifa, a name that endures to this day and is also the origin of the term Tarif, a testament to the early administrative and economic practices introduced by the Moors. Tariq ibn Ziyad, a key figure in the early stages of the conquest, led a substantial army that successfully occupied significant portions of Spain. This rapid territorial expansion demonstrated the strength, organization, and military prowess of the Moorish forces. Their swift advances laid the foundation for the establishment of a lasting Muslim presence in the Iberian Peninsula. The intellectual vibrancy of the Moorish world during this early period is further underscored by the contributions of figures like El Yeri in later centuries. While his primary influence is noted in the 12th and 13th centuries regarding advanced agricultural techniques, it reflects a broader intellectual tradition that took root in the earlier phases of Moorish rule. This emphasis on innovation and knowledge transfer was a hallmark of their civilization. Medieval Nubia's utilization of sequías, animal-powered devices for drawing water, provides a parallel example of the technological advancements and agricultural sophistication present in regions connected to the broader Islamic world during this time. These innovations highlight a commitment to cultivation and resource management that characterized many of these societies. The origins of the CLE cell trait in the Portuguese population offer an intriguing genetic link to African imports during the period of Moorish influence. DNA analysis suggests 2 main importations, one coinciding with the Moorish presence between the 8th and 13th centuries, further underscoring the demographic connections between North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula. The term Moors itself, originating from the Phoenician word for Western, evolved over time but historically often grouped Northwest Africans notably. This term was frequently linked to terms describing black individuals in various European languages, suggesting a historical perception of a distinct identity associated with the Moors. Indeed, within Spain, the Moors were historically linked to black identity and culture. The term morena, still used today, refers to a shiny black color and was often used to denote a distinct characteristic associated with the Moors. Historical accounts, such as the Diary of Samuel Pepys, further highlight this association of Moors with African heritage within Spanish cultural understanding. By the year 950 AD, the Moorish civilization in Spain had reached a remarkable zenith of intellectual and agricultural achievement. The flourishing of book production in Cordova, with an estimated annual output of 80,000 beautifully bound manuscripts, stands as a powerful testament to their commitment to knowledge and learning. Furthermore, the Moors excelled in a multitude of industries, including agriculture, mining, and various sciences, making significant contributions to global knowledge and trade during this era.
All right, now during the pinnacle of intellectual culture in 950 AD, Joseph McCabe tells us books were now in such demand that Professor Ribera estimates Cordova alone produced 70,000 to 80,000 a year, all beautifully handwritten and very richly bound. The old parchment roll was discarded, and the manufacture of paper, which the Persians had learned from the Chinese, occupied large mills at Zatifa. The Caliph had a superbly housed collection of at least 400,000, some writers say 600,000 books, in rich bookcases. Courtiers and rich merchants followed his example, and libraries of 10,000 to 50,000 works were found in the mansions of the wealthy. Even the humbler classes thirsted for books, says Ribera, and the servants or ladies of the harem were of higher price if they were well read. The wit of the learned is as precious as the blood of the martyr, a popular proverb ran. One copying shop at Cordova employed 170 women, and women authors were highly esteemed. And what that means is there is therefore going to be a genre of black women writers once those documents are tracked down. Okay, so a summary of the Moorish achievements then. The silk industry, agriculture where they were growing rice, sugarcane, dates, ginger, cotton, lemons, and strawberries. Mining, where they were mining gold, silver, tin, and lead. There was a maritime industry. There were factories turning out sword blades, turning out shields, turning out brass and iron implements. And the sciences, such as the number system we have today, the compass, the teaching of geography from a globe. By the way, the compass, that wasn't an African invention. Somebody else did that. But bringing it into Spain was the Moors. Teaching of geography from a globe, yes. There is a famous Moorish geography text by a scholar called El Idrisi, and he says the world is as round as a sphere, and the waters are adherent on it by a process of natural equilibrium, he means gravity, and it is divided into 360 degrees. This is in a Moorish geography book, 1153. Are we feeling this? Yeah, that book, by the way, the other name for it is Kitab Ruja, the Book of Roger. Moreover, the materia medica that Europe had right up until the 1900s was the same one that the Moors introduced. How do we know this? H.G. Wells drops that information. Right, now impact in Europe. By 950 AD, centers of learning were just beginning in Christian Europe. Located at Barcelona, Toulouse, Marseille, Lyon, Segovia, etc., they existed to translate texts from Arabic to Latin. Right, how much time have I got? How much time have I got?
As long as you want. Carry on.
All right, stretch time. Everyone get up. Okay, so it's like this. Right, if someone hasn't stood up, feel free to tickle that person. All right, so it's left like this, good. It's to the right like this, good. It's to the back like this, good. It's like this, good. All right, thanks a lot, sit down. Okay, I'm gonna have to push the pace. Right, the next chapter of the history of the Moors in Spain concerns the Almoravids. So we're now in the African deserts among the Berbers of North and West Africa. In the year 1048, Yahya ibn Ibrahim, ruler of the Berbers of the desert, made a pilgrimage to Mecca. He returned to North Africa with a religious teacher from Mecca called Ibn Yazin, and Yazin attempted to teach Islam among the desert Berbers. He failed and was chased away. So everyone then ended up fleeing to Tekra on the Senegal River. So we're now in Senegal. There they established a monastery and lived as recluses, and then people joined this movement from Senegal, and they became known as El Morabitun, or in English, Morabites. Another word is the French one, marabout. Does that make sense? This is all West Africa now. And the word that you see in the literature is El Moravids. Now, in Tekre, the movement grew. Tekrurians wanted their independence from ancient Ghana and saw the new movement as a force that could win that independence. So in 1062, the Almoravids, the same group from the desert and now people from Senegal, they established Marrakesh, which is the African capital of their empire. So Marrakesh in Morocco used to be a black city. 1076, they conquered ancient Ghana and held it for some years. Tekre became independent of Ghanaian imperial rule. By the time we get to 1082, there were hundreds of Moors and Arabs streaming into Africa, fleeing the campaigns of the Christians because the Moorish rule, the Arab rule in Spain had become unstable and the Europeans were kicking off, so people fled to Africa. They visited Yusuf, leader of the Berbers, and they begged him to get an army together to help, to assist the Muslims against the Christian onslaught that was taking place in Spain. Yusuf raised an army said to have included every ethnic group in the Western Desert and sent them across the sea into Spain, where the African army beat the Christians at Zalaka 1086. That is Yusuf ibn Tashfin. We feeling that? Now, just to put it in perspective, Yusuf ibn Tashfin, can you see Mansa Musa's on the same map? Yes. Who's darker? Right, so can you see the Moor is darker than the Negro? Are you feeling this? Now, isn't that powerful evidence? So anyone wants to run up their mouth, show them this. All right, so did they build anything in Africa? In Marrakesh, that's one of the monuments there. So if you go in that monument and you look up, that's what's there. Now, as ruler of Spain, Yusuf's forces seized Seville, dethroned its Islamic rulers. He accused them of being sunk in pleasure and sloth. And the result was the Almoravid Empire had a court in Africa centered in Marrakesh and a court in Spain centered in Seville. And according to Lady Lugard, this established once more a supreme sultan upon the throne of Andalusia. The dynasty which he founded must be regarded as an African conquest and an African dynasty. That's coming from Lady Lugard, the same woman that named Nigeria. Nigeria, same woman. All right, now the Almoravid Empire was very extensive. Under their sway were the lands of Senegal, Morocco, Algeria, Tunis, and Spain, with 13 kings acknowledging the overlordship of Yusuf. So can we see a map? We feeling that? A little bit big, isn't it? So what did they achieve? The Almoravids are probably the people responsible for spreading golden coinage into Europe. From the 12th century, the Christian Spaniards minted golden coinage to imitate the Almoravid coins. In 13th century mints in Florence, Genoa, Marseille, and Venice turned out golden coins in imitation of those of the Christian Spaniards. And in 14th century Europe, Northern Europe, we start to see golden coins. And when golden coins were made in Britain, what name were they given? Guineas. And according to El Idrisi, I mentioned him a minute ago, El Idrisi, gold was minted at some place in the extreme west of Africa in the 12th century and put into circulation. That might be where the Almoravid coins came from. All right? Okay, now, the Almoravids tried something in Spain. We're not quite sure what the something was, but they got their butts whooped. And the result then was the Kingdom of Aragon issued a crest that shows that the Christian cross has beaten the 4 Moorish princes. Does that make sense? All right, now can you see how the Moors are depicted? No ambiguity there, right? And then when the Habsburg dynasty came along, they took the same crest and turned it into one of their coins. And can you see that not only have we got the crowns, can you see the hair? Are we feeling that? And you know, you've got places like Corsica, Sardinia, those kind of places. You want to look at their flags. Yeah? We are on their flags. All right, now, that was the Almoravids. The next dynasty are the Almohades. And they began as a religious movement among the Mesmuda Berbers of Morocco. And according to the documents from the time, the Mesmuda Berbers were described as blacks by Abu Shama in his Kitab al-Rabdatayan. Blacks, Sudan. Does that make sense? So in 1106, Ibn Tumart completed his religious education and preached against the Almoravid establishment, who he accused of being lax and luxurious. So Ibn Tumart himself was declared to be the Mahdi, which is the Messiah. What happened next? Well, Abdul Mumin, another Masmuda Berber, took control of the movement. He was a brilliant organizer who unified the various Berber groups into a cohesive force. And there was therefore a power struggle between the Almoravid establishment and the newly rising Almohadis. And the newcomers triumphed in 1147. They seized Marrakesh and executed the last Almoravid monarch. The documents say he was deprived of his head. And 1150, they became masters of Spain. Thus, for a second time, says Lady Lugard, a purely African dynasty reigned upon the most civilized throne of Europe. This is why you've got to quote this stuff. You follow me? All right, so did they build anything in Africa? This is the Koutoubia Mosque of Marrakesh. Let's take a look inside. Is that not exquisite? We feeling that? All right, now the city of Seville in Spain became the African capital in Spain. It was a fine city of famous gardens, squares, and a suspension bridge. It had good streets lined with magnificent buildings and spacious houses. The courtyards were planted with trees that bore oranges, lemons, and other fruits. And they had a population of perhaps 500,000 people. Right, that's there right now. We feeling that? This is the El Cazaba Palace. If you get the opportunity to take a look, take a look. And of course, the Heralde of Seville. Now that is, that building now is a cathedral, but you can infer what it would have been before it was a cathedral. It was the mosque. Yeah? Meanwhile, did I mention that there were translation houses that were established in certain parts of Europe that were translating texts from Arabic to Latin? By now, those places had borne fruit. And by the 12th and 13th centuries, we get the rise of the major European universities. Bologna in Italy, 1158. Montpellier, France, 1180. Oxford, England, 1200. Toulouse, France, 1223. Rome, Italy, 1245. Cambridge, England, 1257. Are we feeling this? And this is the beginnings of what's going to become known as the European Renaissance. Now, there was much disunity among the Almohadis, and therefore things fell apart. There was African and Arab disunity. I don't want to get into that. No, let me get into that. Why not? Have we got time? There's a document, Abu Ghaffar refusing the post of Secretary of Granada, and he refused the post because he had to work along the Sultan's son. And he wrote, the dark-skinned Berber seemed to him far below his own intellectual standards. Now, just marinate on that. All right, now the Kingdom of Granada. Right, this is now the 4th dynasty. And according to Professor Lane Poole, the Kingdom of Granada was the last bulwark of the Moors in Spain. It was not much that was now left of them. Between 1238 and 1260, Fernando III of Castile and Jaime I of Aragon conquered Valencia, Córdoba, Seville, and Murcia. And the rule of the Moors was now restricted to the present province of Granada. Within this limit, however, their kingdom was destined to endure for another 2 centuries and a half. Though hemmed in on all sides, the Moors were well served by soldiers. The people of the conquered cities, the most valiant warriors of the vanquished Muslim states, came to place their swords at the disposal of the one remaining Mohammedan king. 50,000 Moors are recorded to have fled to his protection from Valencia, and 300,000 from Seville, Xeres, and Cadiz. Nevertheless, Granada was forced to become tributary to the Castilian crown. The founder of the dynasty of the Beni Nazir, i.e. the Nazrids, an Arab called Ibn el-Ahmar, the red man because of his fair skin and hair, was a vigorous sovereign. So this now is not an African dynasty. This is now an Arab dynasty. Does that make sense? But it seems that Africans stepped very, very correctly. Here's how. Because it seems that they worked out, better marry him off to this woman and keep that going. So by the time we get to the end of this dynasty, they're black. So yeah, they stepped very correctly here. What have we got? Okay, now in the case of Ibn al-Ahmar, we read, he paid homage and tribute to Fernando and his son Alfonso the Learned, not, however, without more than one struggle to free himself from their yoke, and from that time forward, Granada, with its surrounding territory, was generally left alone. All right, now, what's there? We feeling this? By the way, if you ever go to the site of Alhambra, and you want to document what's there, it will take you about 4 hours to photograph everything. And that's if you're at it, yeah? All right, towards endgame. After 1417, however, Muslim leadership in Granada became more and more unstable. There were short-lived reigns, factional fighting, and rulers getting their backing from the Christians. After 1469, the kingdoms of the Christians, Aragon and Castile, had become united by the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella. From 1484, they campaigned against the Moors and gradually closed in and then blockaded the city. So we get the conquest of Granada, 2nd of January, 1492. Ferdinand and Isabella entered Granada as its masters. They exiled Abu Abdallah. Abu Abdallah is his proper name, but in European accounts he's called Boabdil. Abu Abdallah, Boabdil, same person. So they exiled Abu Abdallah, where his descendants learned to beg for their daily bread. 4 years later, King Manuel of Portugal ordered the expulsions of the Africans. Those expulsions continued up to the time of King Philip III, who completed the policy in 1609. Some returned to North and West Africa, but others fled elsewhere in Europe. Where in Europe did some of them go? England. You follow me? John Blank, all that stuff. Yeah, they end up here, some of them. It is stated, writes Professor Lane Poole, that no less than 3 million of Moors were banished between the fall of Granada and the first decade of the 17th century. They were cleaned out. Right, now the question is how do the Spaniards remember this? Now, a documentary was made by Raggy Omar, and it's like, bruh, you dropped the ball. You're going to see how Raggy Omar dropped the ball. Talking about things that don't matter, when things that do matter don't get mentioned. Does that make sense? But why it's important is there's a Spanish ritual where they've got these puppets that they're holding up. And the puppets, you can infer, one of them is supposed to be Ferdinand, one of them is supposed to be Isabella, one of them is supposed to be Boabdil, Abu Abdallah, and one of them is Boabdil's mother. Now the mother is veiled. Does that make sense? But you can see her hands. All right, check this out, you all.
The 11th century witnessed the Moorish influence in both Africa and Spain reaching a significant apex. In Africa, the El Mourav movement emerged as a powerful force, inspiring independence from the ancient kingdom of Ghana. This pivotal movement culminated in the establishment of Marrakesh as its capital, marking a significant shift in the political landscape of Northwest Africa and demonstrating the dynamism and agency within the region. Simultaneously, in Spain, Yusuf ibn Tashfin rose to prominence, uniting diverse Berber tribes under his leadership. This unification forged a formidable army that played a crucial role in defending Muslim territories against the encroaching Christian forces from the north. His leadership and the strength of the Almoravid El Mourav army effectively halted the advance of the Christian kingdoms for a significant period, preserving the Moorish presence in the Iberian Peninsula. The El Mourav Empire, with its center straddling Morocco and Spain, represented a notable instance of African conquest exerting royal authority in Andalusia. This empire left a lasting impact on Europe, not least through its pioneering introduction of gold coinage. This initiative inspired minting practices in other European kingdoms, particularly in Italy and England, during the 12th to 14th centuries, highlighting the economic influence emanating from the Moorish world. The intellectual dynamism fostered by the Moors also played a crucial role in the eventual intellectual awakening of Europe. Translation houses emerged in Europe, facilitating the transfer of knowledge from Arabic into Latin. This monumental effort allowed European scholars to access the vast body of classical Greek and Roman learning that had been preserved and expanded upon by Arab and Moorish intellectuals. This transmission of knowledge spurred significant intellectual growth across Europe, laying the groundwork for the emergence of early European universities. The intellectual foundations provided by Moorish scholarship in fields such as mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy were instrumental in shaping the curriculum and intellectual discourse within these nascent institutions of higher learning. The Kingdom of Granada represented the final stronghold of the Moors in Spain as the Reconquista progressed. Hemmed in by the increasingly powerful Christian kingdoms, Granada faced a period of growing pressure and disunity. Despite these challenges, the Moorish kingdom managed to endure for several centuries, a testament to the resilience and strategic acumen of its rulers and defenders. During this later period, Granada received crucial military support from valiant warriors hailing from the cities that had previously fallen to the Christian forces. These individuals, often with deep-seated ties to the Moorish culture and a determination to resist Christian dominance, rallied to the defense of Granada, bolstering its ability to withstand the ongoing pressure. Despite its relative strength and the support it garnered, the Kingdom of Granada eventually became tributary to the Castilian crown. This tributary status imposed certain obligations and limitations on the Moorish kingdom, yet it allowed its Arab dynasty to maintain a degree of influence and leadership within its remaining territories for a considerable period. However, the internal disunity within the Kingdom of Granada ultimately weakened its ability to resist the sustained pressure from the Christian kingdoms. Factionalism and internal conflicts eroded its strength, making it increasingly vulnerable to external threats. This internal strife played a significant role in its eventual demise. The culmination of the Reconquista arrived with the fall of Granada, a pivotal event that marked a significant cultural decline in Spain from the perspective of the Moorish influence. The remnants of Islam in Spain were symbolically represented, as noted in the summary, by puppets of Granada's last Muslim rulers, serving as a poignant reminder of a lost era. In contrast to the visible remnants of Islamic culture, the Jewish identities within Spain faced a different fate. The expulsion of the Jewish population in 1492 resulted in a more profound loss of their cultural presence and contributions to Spanish society, a stark consequence of the shift in political and religious dominance. Following the fall of Granada in 1492, Spain transitioned into an era significantly shaped by the influence of the Inquisition. This institution, established to enforce religious orthodoxy, played a considerable role in stifling scientific progress and cultural advancement within the country, arguably hindering the intellectual dynamism that had characterized the Moorish period. The departure of the Moors and the subsequent dominance of the Inquisition led to a noticeable decline in Spain's overall cultural and economic vitality. The loss of the diverse skills and knowledge that the Moorish population had contributed had a tangible negative impact on various sectors of Spanish society. Cities that had once flourished as centers of learning, trade, and craftsmanship under Moorish rule, such as Seville and Toledo, experienced a discernible decline in their industries and the quality of their craftsmanship. This economic and cultural degradation reflected the significant loss of a vital segment of the population and their expertise. The social fabric of Spain also underwent a transformation, with former centers of learning and culture increasingly replaced by poverty, crime, and neglect. This stark contrast to the preceding era of Moorish prosperity underscores the significant societal impact of the Reconquista and the subsequent policies implemented in the newly unified Christian Spain.
All right, check this out, you all.
The only remnants of Islamic Al-Andalus in this procession are these giant puppets of Granada's last Muslim rulers, Abdul and his queen. But of the Jews, nothing remains. And those who converted even lost their identities. They were given Christian names. But to the church, they would always be infidels at heart.
Did you like the betrayal of Abu Abdallah and his mother? Are we feeling that? And notice it wasn't me that did that. I ain't got nothing. They didn't ask me, trust me. That's how the Spanish are remembering that. All right, a European scholar's assessment. Professor Lane Poole says, in 1492, the last bulwark of the Moors gave way before the Crusader Ferdinand and Isabella, and with Granada fell all Spain's greatness. For a brief while indeed, the reflection of the Moorish splendor cast a borrowed light upon the history of the land, which it had warmed with its sunny radiance. The great epoch of Isabella, Charles V, Philip II, Columbus, Cortes, and Pizarro shed a last halo about the dying moments of a mighty state. Then followed the abomination of desolation, the rule of the Inquisition, and the blackness of darkness in which Spain has been plunged ever since. In the land where science was once supreme, the Spanish doctors became noted for nothing but their ignorance and incapacity, and the discovery of Newton and Harvey were condemned as pernicious to the faith. Where once 70 public libraries had fed the minds of scholars and 500,000 books had been gathered together at Cordova for the benefit of the world, such indifference to learning afterwards prevailed that the new capital, Madrid, possessed no public library in the 18th century. And even the manuscripts of the Escurial were denied in our own days to the first scholarly historian of the Moors, though himself a Spaniard. The 16,000 looms of Seville soon dwindled to a fifth of their ancient number. The arts and industries of Toledo and Almeria faded into insignificance. The very baths, public buildings of equal ornament and use, were destroyed because cleanliness savored too strongly of rank infidelity. In other words, if you washed yourself too much, that proves that you're not a real Christian. Get it? That's what that means, right? The land, deprived of the skillful irrigation of the Moors, grew impoverished and neglected. The richest and most fertile valleys languished and were deserted. Most of the populous cities which filled every district of Andalusia fell into ruinous decay, and beggars, friars, and bandits took the place of scholars, merchants, and knights. So low fell Spain after she had driven away the Moors. Such is the melancholy contrast offered by her history. Now, let me just say one thing about this. In the 19th century, that's the period where scholars were developing theories of white racial superiority. Does that make sense? And there was something that was around called the Negro question. And the great philosopher, John Stuart Mill, addressed the Negro question by saying two things. What about ancient Egypt? And the next one was, what do you think he said next? What about Spain? And at the time, no one could answer. Because, you know, this book had come out. What were people going to say now? What about Spain? All right, so my name's Robin Walker. I'm part of the Black Secret Education Project. We are quietly empowering the people. Definitely take a photograph of this. Our website is www.theblacksecret.co.uk. It is a subscription site. So if you want to subscribe, you can get all of our content. But if you don't want to subscribe and you want the free book, 100 Black History Facts, give us your email and we will send you that book. Go through that site, get that material, and that concludes the presentation, The Civilization of the Moors. Thank you very much.
We are running slightly over time, but obviously it's really important that we have engagement. So I want to take questions in rounds of threes so that we could get through it a bit faster. So could I have the first three people that would like to ask a question? So I've got that person right at the back. And if I start on this side, then I'll come to that side, and then I've got yourself, and then I've got yourself. So if I take the person right at the back that put your hand up. Yes, you?
Would you say that do the Arabs have their own kind of thing where they came onto the planet, or is my theory correct that what we see as Arabs now and the people that are in that horn of Africa there, are they the first mixed race people?
All right, the history of the Arabs is really, really complicated. I could get into it, but that's going to take so much time, yeah? What I would recommend is, you might be able to get the book online. There is a book called Arabia Felix, and that was written by Dr. Bertrand Thomas. And at the back of the book, there's an anthropological essay by Sir Arthur Keith, where he talks about the changing ethnic picture of the southern Arabs. And the original Arabs do indeed look like the populations of the Horn of Africa. But that doesn't necessarily make them mixed. Does that make sense? That's just a particular appearance. And Sir Arthur Keith has that information.
Being a teacher yourself, where did you start, or in this current day and age, what would you advise someone to start with, as well as the first book or first thing to start taking it bit by bit?
I wouldn't do it the way I did it. I just wouldn't, because the game has moved on in a lot of ways.
Okay.
I've written the book When We Ruled, which is a good place to start. I've also got the website, The Black Secret. That's a good place to start. Who else has got stuff that's worth? Honest opinion, those would be the best places to start.
So you said the book you wrote...
When We Ruled.
When We Ruled, and the second book?
No, the website. Which is the Black Secret Education Project.
Secret Education, thank you.
Yeah.
My question is, what is the connection between Moorish science or Blacker Moors and science, or Moors and chemistry? So I just would like you to pass comment on that, please.
Well, the word chemistry itself is supposed to be coming from the word for black, anyway. But what it means is if we were to trace the high culture of the Spain Moorish thing, it really did put a shot in the arm from the medieval period to create the Renaissance. Now, it's not the only shot in the arm. You had what the Turks were doing further east, and they had a big impact as well. Does that make sense? But yeah, it's a very, very key link in the evolution of the sciences. I do recommend to people, while the museum does have a lot of wrong information, the Granada Science Museum, where what they do is reconstruct the sciences during the period of the Moors. And as I said, they give a lot of credit to Syrians and all the rest of it without giving credit to Africans, but you can still pull sense out of nonsense.
Yeah.
Hi. I studied in the University of Valencia, and I didn't get to go to Cadiz, Granada, and Sevilla, and I wanted to go there, but I have to have my mental positioning of when I'm looking at things because of the cover-up. And I wanted to, if you can, just the briefest or brief summary, the briefest, just to put that position of, apart from the Science Museum, where must I go?
All right, definitely the city of Córdoba. And what's there is outside the city is the Medina El Zahra Palace. That's a must. Inside, it's La Mezquita, the great mosque of they call it the cathedral now, the cathedral in Córdoba. That's a must. All right, then you've got Seville. You've got the Golden Tower, it's called. And you've got the El Cazaba Palace. Again, they're musts. What else have you got? Granada, you've got the Alhambra. The Alhambra, you can wander around that for 4 hours and not get bored, right? Then you've got other places as well. Basically, Spain is like this. Right? Well, you know that already, yeah? And every pinnacle, there is a Moorish castle and a mosque. And if you read the caption, they will tell you this. They will say, Christian castle, originally built by the Moors, and church, originally mosque, something, something, something. They will tell you this. And they will tell you in Spanish and in English. And in truth, all you need to do in Spain is the southern half of it. Any place you go, just do that on the map, go there. Chances are, if it's on a pinnacle, there will be a castle and a mosque. Well, church. Yeah? So, me and a friend, we did that. And we were photographing loads of stuff that is not in the books, do you see? Yeah? Even the place we stayed at, I think it's called Olvera, that was just picked at random. There was a Moorish castle there and the church. Yeah? But definitely those big 3 places, Seville, Granada, Córdoba.
Okay. And the last question?
My question was more to do with the military aspect of the Moors and their time in Spain, and particularly looking around the period, so we're talking about the early medieval period. So from about 1096 onwards, I want to know what the effect of the big talk, the rally at Clermont, affected the Moors and their stranglehold on Spain. What thoughts have you got on that?
I don't, other than the 1096 is where you get the Christian cross has conquered the 4 Moorish princes. You know the thing on Aragon? That's the same year, 1096.
Yeah, we're talking about the period when Urban II made the big call for the First Crusade.
You're right, certainly it would have had an impact, but it wasn't immediate, because there's still the Almohades that came after that. Do you see? And the Almohades still controlled certainly half of Spain, the southern half. Certainly things fell apart. Once we get to 1216, things really are falling apart. But that wasn't due entirely to European pressure. A lot of that was also due to a lot of internal stupidity different people seeding. Do you see? So what can happen is this. When outsiders conquer you, does that make sense? The time at which they are effective is when there's internal stupidity. And certainly that time period I would have put beginning 1216, which is a bit later than what you're talking about.
Let's give Robin a final round of applause.
Despite the eventual decline of their political power in the Iberian Peninsula, the cultural and intellectual contributions of the Moors left an enduring legacy that significantly influenced the trajectory of European history, particularly in the realms of science and the Renaissance. The very term chemistry, as the summary suggests, is believed by some to derive from a word signifying black, potentially linking its origins to African heritage and the early scientific endeavors within the Moorish world. Key historical sites scattered across southern Spain stand as tangible reminders of this profound Moorish influence. The city of Cordova, once a vibrant intellectual capital, still boasts the magnificent Mosque Cathedral, a stunning architectural fusion, and the ruins of the Grand Medina al-Zahra Palace, both testaments to the sophisticated civilization that once thrived there. Similarly, Seville and Granada house significant landmarks that bear witness to the extensive cultural impact of the Moors. Seville's Golden Tower, with its distinctive Islamic architectural features, and Granada's breathtaking Alhambra Palace complex stand as iconic symbols of the artistic and engineering achievements of the Moorish period. These sites continue to attract visitors and serve as powerful reminders of a rich and complex history, recognizing the historical contributions of Africans, as exemplified by the Moors, is essential for a more accurate and comprehensive understanding of world history. Many individuals feel that their education has inadequately addressed the significant roles played by African civilizations and individuals in shaping global events. This prompts a desire to uncover a more complete and truthful historical narrative. Attending events and engaging with resources that explore these, often marginalized histories can provide attendees with deeper insights into the significant roles that Africans have played in the development of civilization. By shedding light on these contributions, a more balanced and inclusive understanding of the past can be achieved. Understanding the significance of the Moors in our collective history is not merely an academic exercise, it holds crucial implications for how we educate future generations. By learning about their multifaceted contributions, we can provide a more accurate and empowering historical narrative for young people, fostering a greater appreciation for the interconnectedness of cultures and civilizations. The insights shared by Robin Walker serve to clarify misconceptions about history and empower individuals with a stronger sense of their own identity and heritage. By presenting a more nuanced and comprehensive picture of the past, such educational endeavors contribute to a more informed and equitable understanding of the world. He also touches upon personal reflections on deep cultural connections to Moorish history in Spain. The speaker's experiences of learning Spanish while immersed in the culture highlight the enduring presence of the Moorish legacy in everyday life. From language to architecture, the recollection of an impactful festival where locals commemorate the 700-year rule of the Moors underscores the continued significance of this historical period in the collective memory of the region. Such events prompt deeper considerations of racial identity and the complex layers of historical legacies that continue to shape contemporary society. The video concludes by encouraging a mindset of critical evaluation of information and perspectives. It emphasizes the importance of connecting with knowledgeable individuals to enhance personal growth and understanding, echoing the spirit of inquiry that characterized the intellectual achievements of the Moorish civilization itself. Ultimately, the story of the Moors in Spain serves as a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of cultures, the fluidity of historical boundaries, and the enduring impact of intellectual and cultural exchange. Their legacy continues to resonate, prompting reflection on identity, history, and the importance of seeking a more complete and nuanced understanding of the past. By acknowledging and understanding the significant contributions of the Moors, we gain a richer appreciation for the complexities of European history and the vital role played by African influences in its development. Their story serves as a powerful testament to the enduring impact of a vibrant and innovative civilization. The exploration of Moorish civilization, as championed by initiatives like the Hidden Science Academy, is therefore not just a historical inquiry but a crucial step towards a more inclusive and accurate understanding of our shared human story, one that recognizes the profound and lasting impact of diverse cultures on the world we inhabit today.